Thanks for joining me. This is Danny and welcome back to my FTB Infinity series. Today we are going to be making the Draconic Reactor. Finally, we're going to be getting hundreds of thousands of RF per tick. In fact, we could even get it up to like over 1 million RF per tick. But that takes a while. We're going to need one reactor core. That is this guy, and this is what we needed the Chaos Shard for. You probably already know that the Awakened Draconium is something that we get by doing a ritual, which involves a dragon heart and some charged draconium. And the shard is something that we got from the Chaos Guardian. When we killed the Chaos Guardian, we were able to grab that from the island. If you haven't looked into killing the Chaos Guardian, you may want to look into that because it is extremely difficult. Then we're going to need 4 reactor stabilizers. Oh, here we go. Chaos core we're going to need, so it looks like we're going to have to do... Okay, so we're going to need 5 Chaos Shards altogether and a whole bunch of awakened cores. I'm going to end up crafting these off camera. Boy, I wonder if I hope I have enough Awakened Draconium. If not, I might have to go back to the end and kill the Ender Dragon. And then we need these reactor stabilizer. So we need a lot of Awakened Draconium. Okay, a little time has passed. I've got my 4 chaotic cores. These are really expensive. Wow. And then, let's see, we need a reactor stabilizer rotor assembly. So we're going to need a couple more wyvern cores and a bunch of these inner rotors and outer rotors. More awakened draconium ingots and 4 wyvern cores. Hopefully you have a wither skeleton spawner because you're going to need a lot of skulls or a lot of withers. Okay, I think I finally have everything we need for our reactor stabilizer. So we now have our Draconic Reactor core and our reactor stabilizer, and we have 8 awakened draconium blocks, which we're going to use for fuel. This was about 6 dragon kills, I think, maybe more. There's a lot of dragon kills and a lot of draconium, of course. 1 energy injector. Hopefully we don't need a lot of draconium for this. Oh, we don't. Okay, we just need a wyvern core and 4 more of these inner rotors. So it's a good thing I made too many of those. But we do still need the wyvern core, which is yet another wither. I lost track of how many withers had to be killed in the making of this. A lot. I would say somewhere in the area of 20, 30, something like that. And there is our reactor energy injector. So that is everything we need to construct the reactor. But it's not all we're going to need. There's a couple more things that we're going to want to have in order to like have it not blow up and destroy our whole base. So the first thing that we're going to want is 2 flux gates. These are a Draconic evolution thing. We're going to need a couple more Draconic cores. Hardened flux duct from thermodynamics. Okay, so we've got 2 flux gates, and then we're going to need a tesseract to transfer stuff. Whoops, I think I already made one. Let's see. Yeah, we need a tesseract. We're going to want some cryotheum flux ducts. We're going to want some awakened draconium, and we're going to want some vibrant capacitor banks, or some way to store power. Actually, we don't really need that, but I want to use those in order to be able to kind of monitor the input-output. So I think we've got everything we need now. So let's go. I've got a little build started already where we're going to put this guy. Now keep in mind, this Draconic Reactor is extremely dangerous. If you don't set it up correctly, it'll blow up. And it destroys everything. There are no blocks that you can use to like buffer the explosion, and it will destroy up to 200 blocks radius. So 200 blocks in each direction. That's 200 blocks is like 12.5 chunks. So so here's our little building that I made. It kind of looks like a reminds me of like a helmet or something, like a space helmet. But if this thing were to blow up, 12.5 chunks in each direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This whole area would just be a big crater. It would destroy everything that we can see, like beyond what we can see. So that's why I've got this thing so far away from the base. I mean, it might even be a good idea to set this up in a separate dimension. I just decided to do it here because I'm just going to be careful and not let it blow up, right? So we won't have to worry about that. But I've got everything set up in here, where we have to place things. So the Draconic core is going to go in the center. Our reactor stabilizers are going to go on the 4 sides. Now we can do this in horizontally or in upright. Horizontally, or we can do it vertically. I've decided I'm going to do it vertically for this particular one because, just because I think it looks cool. So, and I'm going to eventually, when we're done, I'm going to put windows. I'm going to replace a lot of this with glass so that we can kind of see it from the outside. But I want to get some kind of a block. It doesn't matter what it is. I'll just grab some andesite, whatever. It's kind of silly looking, but so the reason I got the blocks is because when we place these guys, they're going to be facing opposite us when we place the reactor stabilizer, and we want the reactor stabilizers all facing toward the center, toward the reactor core. And I usually place the core last just because I always end up breaking it and replacing it anyway in order for it to find everything after I place it. So okay, then that we just place so that it's facing this way, and that will place as you expect it to. And then we'll just put a piece of dirt there, get rid of that, and then we place our core. And that's it. And then we get rid of this. And then we can right click on these guys and we should get a GUI. Hooray! And it should say offline. Oh, it says invalid setup. So something is not quite right. Oh, right. So now we know. This one, whoops. This one is still blocked. I didn't remove those blocks. And if we right click on this guy, we'll see we're not getting a GUI. So that's how you find out, okay, which one of mine is screwed up. Like these 3, when we right click on them. Now this one's not giving us a GUI either for some reason. I don't know why. But these should all be 4 blocks. I think it's between 4 and 8, but they should be at least 4 blocks away from the core. That means 4 air blocks in between. Okay, so then what we're going to have to do is place a piece of dirt to the side so it's not blocking anything. Break this. Oh, okay, it is a little hard to break. And replace it. And now we should see we are still getting an invalid setup. Why are we getting an invalid setup? Okay, I finally got it. I had to break and replace the blocks several times. But what happens is when you click on this thing, it should say offline. If it says invalid setup, or if nothing happens when you right click on it, then for whatever reason it's not recognizing it as a multi-block structure. So if that happens, check your dimensions, of course. Make sure you're exactly 4 blocks away. And if everything is good, just break the blocks and replace them. And you have to break the Draconic Reactor. Every time you break and replace one of these, you got to break and replace the Draconic Reactor core. And I just kept doing it over and over again. And what you can do is just click on all 4 of them. And whichever one you could not click on, whichever one you don't get a GUI in, or maybe more than one that you're not getting a GUI in, is not being recognized as a part of the multi-block structure. So you have to break and replace that one. So this was the only one it was seeing, and I just kept breaking and replacing this one until finally this one came up and said invalid setup. And then finally I got this one. And yeah, I don't know. There's some kind of a bug there because obviously they're in the exact same spot they were before, but now it's working and before it wasn't. So cool. So now, so now we are set up. We have a Draconic Reactor. There it is. Hooray. So to get this guy working, first of all, we give it fuel, and that's Draconium. You can give it up to 8 blocks, which is, I think, a stack and 4. And then you'll see it's going to store it in this thing, so that thing gets big. And check this out. When you run into it, you kind of bounce off of it, which is kind of cool. It's weird. So can we just like click start? No, we don't want to do that. So first, I guess let's first look at this GUI and see and talk about what all these different things are. So first of all, we have the core temperature. That's the temperature of the reactor. The higher the temperature, the more RF it's going to generate, but also the more, I guess you could say, unstable it becomes. Here we have the containment field strength. So these guys, these reactor stabilizers, are going to create a containment field around the Draconic Reactor core. The hotter the core is, the more powerful the containment field we need. And the containment field requires RF to maintain itself. So the hotter this thing gets, the more RF we're going to have to pump in to this in order to get the containment field in the blue area. Energy saturation is basically the amount of energy that's kind of stored within the thing. We want to keep this in the green as well. The lower, as we get into the red area, again, our reactor is going to work harder to produce more RF, which is going to cause it to get hotter, which means that the containment field will require more and more RF. The fuel conversion level is how much of the fuel that we put in has been converted to chaos. This thing is going to get higher as time goes on. As it gets higher, this thing's going to become more efficient. It's going to produce more RF, but as we get into the red area, if we completely run out of fuel and we have nothing but chaos in here, it'll blow up. So there's a few different ways that this thing can blow up. One of them is to not have a strong enough containment field. 2 is to pull too much RF, causing it to heat up. 3 is to run out of fuel. Those 3 things will all cause this thing to blow up. So there's a few things that we're going to have to do in order to prevent that from happening. So first of all, we need to pump power into our reactor energy injector, because this is going to inject energy into the reactor, allowing it to, 1, power the containment field. Actually, I'm going to have to break out a block back here, because this is where we're going to pump the power into it. So I've got these cryo-stabilized flux ducts, which have an unlimited RF throughput. That's why I'm using them, because we're dealing with hundreds of thousands of RF here, and these are about the only ducts or conduits or anything that are going to be able to handle that. So I'm just going to stick one of those right there. I don't think I have enough of these. I'm probably going to have to make some more. And then we need to regulate. We want to be able to regulate the amount of power that we bring into this thing, because it will suck as much power as we give it. So no matter how much power you pump in there, it's just going to take it. It has an infinite input amount. So that's why we have these flux gates. The flux gates, the purple side is input in your Draconic Evolution Information tablet. It calls this blue. I call it purple. And then the orange side is output. So if we looked at the other side, we'd see that the other side is orange. And the arrow kind of shows you too. The arrow is pointing in on this side and it's pointing out on that side. So what this guy does is it regulates the amount of RF passing into it based on redstone signal. So we can have a high amount, an amount when we have a full redstone signal, and then we have a low amount. And then we can click here to go plus or minus. Of course, that's really cumbersome. We don't want to do that. We can actually use our scroll wheel. And if you hold down the shift key, it'll allow you to scroll by thousands. So I'm going to crank this all the way up to about 225. 225. Let's keep going. So what this means is if our redstone signal is non-existent, if it's 0, it will allow 0 RF into this guy. If our redstone is 15, it'll allow 225,000 RF into here. Anything in between, and it will go in between. So if we have a redstone signal of 8, then we'll get about 112 or so thousand RF per tick being pumped into that thing. So when we start this guy up, what's going to happen is it's the first thing, it's going to start pulling RF or pumping RF into this thing. In order to even get this thing started, you're going to need a lot of RF. So make sure you have a lot of RF, because if you run out of RF while you're booting this thing up, guess what? It's going to explode, because its temperature is going to be going up while it's filling up its containment field and its energy saturation. And if you run out of RF, it's not going to be able to power its containment field. The containment field will drop and it'll blow up. And you can't just shut it off. If you shut it off, it gradually cools itself down, and by the time it gets cooled off all the way, you'll have a big crater. The reactor energy injector will output a redstone signal to a comparator based on several different things that you can select. If you shift right click on this, you can see, the stupid Britannia thing shows up, but you can see that we've got a comparator mode is now temperature inverted. Here's our containment field, and then containment field inverted. What this basically means is that this thing is going to output a redstone signal to a comparator based on the containment field strength. So the stronger the containment field, the lower the redstone signal, because it's inverted. So that means if our containment field is completely full, it's going to output a redstone signal of 0. If our containment field is completely empty, it'll output a redstone signal of 15. However, it probably won't get a chance to, because by then it will have blown up. So, we're also going to need some red alloy wire. We're going to output the redstone signal to this guy. So now if we look, we can see that the flow currently is 225,000. And that's because we must be getting a full redstone signal. Which makes sense, because we have no containment field strength. So perfect. So we know that's working. Okay, so I moved this in here, and just to double check, our redstone signal is high, and we want to make sure that our flow right now is 225,000, because we should be getting a full redstone signal from our injector. Okay, and then we want to pull energy out. Now you pull the energy out through the reactor stabilizer. So we're going to do this. And again, we're going to use a flux gate. And actually this time it needs to be faced in this direction. Oh, crap, it's going to end up facing me. Did that work? Yes. Okay. Okay. And I have found that you have to have a duct here, because if you put the tesseract right next to one of these things, it doesn't seem to work. So this one we're going to crank up to. This is basically going to determine how much power we're going to pull, because when we pull from the Draconic Reactor, it has an unlimited RF per tick. We can pull out as much RF per tick as we want. But if we pull it out too fast, our energy saturation is going to go down. We're going to pull out all that energy that's in there. And again, the Draconic Reactor works harder and harder and harder to keep up. Our containment field strength requirement increases, and we blow up. So that's why we have this flux gate here, in order to control how much energy we're pulling from this thing. Now with this particular setup that I'm doing, we could probably safely pull maybe 500 some thousand RF per tick. We're going to start out at about, maybe we're going to start at about 350 or so, because we're going to have to increase it gradually. Okay, so now we need to, now we can just use a tesseract, pull energy into that through the tesseract and push energy in through the tesseract, and that's ultimately what I'm going to do. But in the meantime, I'm going to be using these vibrant capacitor banks. Here I'm going to have it tell us the input output, and here there. Okay, I think we're ready to start this guy up. So the first thing we want to do is we want to start pulling power from our base. So I've got the setup to receive only and set frequency. So we're going to fill this guy up. Let's just out of curiosity, let's go home quick and see what kind of power we have currently, just so that we can see how quickly this thing fills up. So we have 1.769 trillion RF. 1.769 trillion RF. And we can have up to 2.14 trillion in RF in here. So we've got about 450 billion RF that we can still pump into there. Okay, so we've got plenty of power, and we have plenty of power at home to pipe into this, and we can have 600,000 RF per tick in and out. The tesseract has unlimited, so we don't have to worry about running out of power. So let's get this guy started. So everything that we need to control is all in this area. So charge reactor. So what's going to happen is it's going to start pulling power, and our containment field is going to start going up. So right now we're outputting about 120 or so RF per tick. So now we've flattened at 120, which is just enough to, and that's based on the amount of energy that it's using is based on this redstone signal and our flow control. So we probably have about a 50% redstone signal right now. So if we look here, we should see that our containment field is about 50% strong. So now that the containment field is 50%, it's going to start charging up our energy saturation. And we're going to want to wait till this is about 50% or so before we turn this thing on. And we can't turn it on yet because it's not charged enough. This does take some time. Still charging. Our energy saturation is up to 50%. Now our temperature is rising. And as you can see, we're starting to get a little bit of effects here and a little bit of noise. We can get up to 8,000 degrees, and our temperature load factor will be about 100%. If we go above 8,000 degrees, it's going to increase exponentially, which means that the containment field will require an exponentially greater amount of RF in order to contain itself. So we want to make sure we don't go over that temperature. But the closer we get to that temperature, the more RF we're going to produce. Charge, hooray! So now we can activate this guy. So when we activate it, it's going to start pulling RF through here. Oh, except we need to give that thing a redstone signal. I'm just going to use a lever. And it's basically going to be 0 if the lever is off, and 353,100 when it's on. So that's how much it's going to pull. But let's turn this on first. So now we can see our containment field is going to start dropping a little bit, and our core temperature is going to go up. Our energy saturation is also going to go up because we're not pulling RF yet. As soon as we turn that switch on, our energy saturation should start going down. And when the energy saturation goes down, the generation rate is going to go up. So right now we're only generating 200 and some RF per tick because our energy saturation is so high. So we want to get that energy saturation lower, but not too low, because if it's too low, then we get hot, like we said 100 times now. So the containment field should stay around 50%, or it should balance out around 50% based on how much we're pumping into it. 225 RF per tick. It doesn't need to be that high. It could be down this low, and it'll be just fine. And then you'll be getting more RF out of it because you won't be pumping so much RF into it. But I'd recommend that if you're doing this manually, if you're not using Computercraft, give yourself some room. Give yourself a little buffer. Let's look at these numbers then. Our temperature load factor is showing how much load is being placed on the containment field based on how hot we are. So like I said, the hotter it is, the more power we have to pump into our containment field in order to maintain it. And this, our field input rate, is telling us what we need to maintain it, to maintain our containment field and saturation. Right now it's saying 124,000, and we are, let's see, we are pumping in 117. So we actually need to increase this a little bit in order to maintain. So now we can see our flow is 124,000. So that should keep our, oh, now we're up to 126. So we'll just go slightly higher than that. Our generation rate, this is telling us how much RF per tick we're producing at the moment. So that RF per tick is being pumped into the energy saturation. And then we're pulling it out right here. So we're pulling out 344,000 RF per tick. It's pumping in 323,000 RF per tick. So we're actually pulling out a little bit more than it's generating right now, which is causing our energy saturation to go down, which is kind of what we want at this point, because we want our energy saturation to be a little bit lower so that our core temperature will go up and it'll produce more RF. As you can see, it is going up. And the fuel conversion rate, this is how fast we're burning fuel. So it's 548 nanobuckets per tick. The Draconium will go a long, long way. Look at those numbers. Look at how quickly they're jumping. Crazy. Like, we're getting millions of RF every second. Alright, some time has passed, probably 10-15 minutes or so. And this is where we're at. We're generating about 400 RF per tick. I'm pulling a little bit more than that right now. Oh no, I'm pulling almost exactly. So we're almost balanced out here. We're keeping our containment field right around 40%. And our temperature is still going up very slowly. Now if we wanted to go up a little faster, the further down we bring this saturation, the faster our temperature will go up. So we can raise this up, but we just have to be careful and make sure it doesn't go too low. You don't want to get it to a point where you have to start causing it to go back up, because in order to get it to go back up, you have to pull less power than you're generating, which causes the temperature to cool off, and then you kind of lose some of your momentum. So you want to gradually raise the temperature without making your saturation go down too low. Okay, more time has passed. I'm up to 420,000 RF per tick. I'm down to about 30.9% saturation. We're still at 40% containment strength. We're very close. What do I have? I have this at about 260 now, so we're bringing in 156. Now I probably don't have time today to wait around for this to get as high as I would want it to get. I'd like to get it up to about 530, 540, somewhere in there. But it does take a lot of time when you're doing it manually. Now, if you're using Computercraft or something, you can walk away and it's a little safer. But when you're doing it manually, you kind of have to keep an eye on it, because we have our energy saturation at 30%, which is basically how the lower the energy saturation, the faster our RF per tick will increase. And that's based on the discrepancy between how much energy we're pulling and how much we're producing. Right now we're actually stable, so our energy saturation is very slowly going to start going back up. As our generation rate increases, it's going to go back up faster because we'll be generating more power than what we're pulling. So that extra energy is going to go into our energy saturation, so we want to let that up. Now, something you want to keep in mind is as your core temperature rises, as you get closer to the danger zone, you want to get your energy saturation up, back up to 50% before you reach that 8,000 degrees. Because once you kind of cross over that 8,000 degrees, things get nasty pretty quickly because the requirement for the containment field will increase exponentially. So our temperature load factor, which is 100% right now, will be 100% at 8,000 degrees. And that's about the most efficient point. Once you get up to about 10,000 degrees, that doubles. So the amount of power that you need to contain for your containment field, to maintain your containment field, is going to double. You get up to 11,000, it's going to double again, and it's going to increase at a very fast curve. At this point, if I left this at about 421, and I left this at what it is now, I could probably walk away, and we'd be fine. And we'd be netting, well, let's see, if we turn this off for a bit, we'll be able to see inputting 421, outputting 157. We're netting 263,000 RF per tick right now. I mean, that's not terrible, right? But of course we can get a lot more than that, and we can get a lot more out of our Draconium. But you know, it really all depends on how much time do you want to spend balancing things out. What kind of risks do you want to take? We're at 1.77. I don't remember what we started with. So just to show you what happens when we shut this thing down, let's make sure that this is send and receive, because if we run out of power, we're going to blow up. So we want to make sure that we've got a good source of power. And then we can shut this guy down. Because once we shut it down, it's no longer going to be producing power, but it's still going to be requiring power in order to keep everything, in order to keep our containment field as the core temperature drops. Still shutting down. It's been a while. It takes a long time, and this whole time it requires power. You can see our containment field strength is really high, even though we're only putting in about 44,000 right now. Oh, now it's starting to drop. Okay, so we're finally offline. Hooray, so now that we're offline, we can pull our fuel back out, whatever fuel we haven't used. So we should have, well, most of what we put in there. We still have 7 blocks and 8 ingots. And 7 nuggets. So we've used 1 nugget, no, 2 nuggets. And then we get back a tiny chaos fragment. Now if we would have left it in there, we would have had more than that, but can I put that back in there? I can't put that back in there. So probably don't take those out, because as I mentioned earlier, having more chaos in there makes it run more efficiently. But I was just doing that for demonstration purposes. So when you're done, it all turns into chaos shards. So you can make another one of these without having to go kill the Chaos Guardian. Before we end today, if you've been following my solar panel saga, you might be interested to know that we actually are ready to make the ultimate solar panel. And I don't know why I'm lagging so bad. Stop that. So let's just break this guy. I have one advanced solar panel over here I just put there for fun. If you happen to miss it, quite a few episodes ago, I think it was a good month ago maybe already, I started making these advanced solar panels from the solar expansion mod in order to make this ultimate solar panel. Now the ultimate solar panel, there it is. generates 32,768 RF per tick. Now, compared to the Draconic Reactor, maybe that doesn't seem like very much, but for a 1-block solar panel, that is insane. And you might think that seems a little OP, but if you've been following this process, you would know that making this thing was not easy. Not at all. Here, let's put a couple of these here. It took so many resources to do this. Hooray! So we should see a net gain in RF right now. Yep, look at that. Now again, it's not as fast as the Draconic Reactor, but that is a lot of freaking RF coming from one solar panel. But in order to make that solar panel, I actually did have to make 32,768 leadstone solar panels in order to make that divided by 8 hardened solar panels, and that divided by 8 redstone, and that I don't know how you would use all that RF. I'm not sure. So if you have any ideas, let me know. If you have any, actually in general, if you have any ideas for this series, let me know, because you know, I am at the end game in this series. I've got lots of resources, but I don't have a lot of ideas anymore. I've done most of the automation. I've played with most of the mods. I haven't played with forestry yet, but I think I'm going to do that in my 1.10 series, and I don't think it has changed very much. So I'll probably be doing a lot of forestry stuff in that series. So in this, but I would like to do some more building here probably, and that sort of thing. We'll probably build a road going out to our reactor and hope that, you know, the reactor doesn't blow it up. It's far enough away from us where it won't blow up our base. We would probably be able to see the crater from here if it did blow up. So hopefully that won't happen. I'm pretty sure it won't. But if you did enjoy this, please don't forget to click the like button. If you have any comments, questions, ideas, or whatever, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And thanks for watching. I hope you join me next time. Bye.